Let me give you the definition of absolute references before we jump right into it. And the definition of an absolute reference is a cell reference in a formula that remains the same when the formula is copied to other cells, as opposed to a relative reference. For example, in an earlier training video we created our first formula here in this cell. Let me go ahead and delete those to the right of it. And in this formula, when we copied the formula to adjacent cells or used the autofill handle, when I click and drag that autofill handle over to the right, it copies the formula relative to the next column here. Because we're going from left to right, the columns in the formula, or the references of the columns in the formula, need to be updated, so it selects the new column, column D. So in this cell, up in the formula bar, it's referencing column C. That's why we've got all the C's. A C for row 7, meaning stay in the same column, but row 7. A C for row 8, stay in the same column, but for row 8, and so on. So when we go ahead and click and drag the autofill handle, or we go ahead and Control C and Control V as in Victor to paste it, Excel is copying the formula, but relative to the new position it's in. And the new position is the column here, so it updates the formula to match the column. And again, when we select in this cell, it was referencing the column D, all the cells within the column D. When we copy and paste it over to here, it's going to update and be relative to the next column, which is column E, so it updates the formula and changes it from the D column to now the E's, referencing still the same rows as these other two. Still, we're looking at rows 7 through 10. Let me go ahead and hit the escape key on the keyboard to get rid of those marching ants. Now with relative referencing, we're going from, at least in this example, from column to column. Well, up here we have a formula that's going row by row. So if I delete the 3 cells below, you can see when I click in this cell up in the formula bar, it's referencing, when I click in it, this row right here. So if I go ahead and I copy this and I go down to the next row, the columns are going to stay the same. It's going to be referencing C through F, and there's C through F, but it's going to update relative to the new row that I'm in. So it'll update the row from 7 to 8. Let me hit the escape key on the keyboard, click and drag down, click in the cell, relative to the row, row 8. So the difference between relative and absolute references is relative is updating relative to the new column that it's in when you're copying formulas. That is, either copying and pasting or using the autofill handle here, as opposed to absolute reference where the cell is going to be constant. It's going to stay the same. In other words, when you copy and paste or you use the autofill handle, it's not going to update it relative to the new row or the new column. So how do you keep a cell fixed that when you go ahead and you copy and paste the formula, that it doesn't update along with the paste or the autofill handle? Well, here's the example I want to use. I've got the commission here, it's 8%, and I want to be able to times or multiply 8% by all of the employees' total sales for the months of January through April. So the formula sounds simple, right? Just come over here to the first employee for their commissions, hit the equals key on the keyboard, select their total or click in the cell, and it's referencing cell H7, and multiply it. And as you recall, the symbol for multiplication is the asterisk, so you can hold down the shift key and hit the number 8 on your keyboard. It brings up the asterisk, or over in the 10 keypad, hit the asterisk key. And then we want to multiply this cell by the commission rate of 8%. So I can either type in, well, H3, or just click on it and it adds it there, H3, and then hit enter when I'm done. That's great. It came up with 8% of 562.01. The only problem is that when I go ahead and I autofill the rest of this in, or I copy and paste it, as you recall, when I go row by row, it wants to update the formula by row. Why is that going to be a problem? Because if I double click in here, notice that when I autofill this in or copy and paste it, logically this is going to update to the new row, which is fine, row 8. But also the commission rate, this cell, is going to update to the next row. Do we have anything in row 4 here? No. Anything in row 5? Well, total, but we don't want to multiply this employee's number here, their total sales, by the word total. We want to keep it constant or fixed on this cell. So let me go ahead and hit enter on the keyboard, come up here, Control C to copy it, paste it, and I get a 0. Control V, paste, Control V. You see when there's nothing there, a 0, it gives us a big fat 0 because it's updating going down by row. In fact, when I select the cell, you can see up here, when I click in it, it's going one row down relative to the row that I just copied and pasted the formula to, which is one down, so it's going one down. Okay, we don't want it to do that. Sure, I could come up here and hover over the border and click and drag it and put it back up there and hit enter and go, okay, I fixed it. But if you have several rows or hundreds or thousands, you don't want to do that. That'd take forever. Do it right the first time. In other words, fix the formula and tell the formula, at least for this cell here, to stay in that cell when you go ahead and copy and paste the formula. And it's really simple to do. In fact, before I show you, let me go ahead and tell you what this error is about. See if this makes sense. If I double click on it, what is it referencing? What is it trying to multiply this cell by? By the cell that has some text. That's why let me hit the escape key. You get the value error. In any case, let me go ahead and hit undo a couple of times to undo all this. Hit the escape key to get rid of the marching ants. Come back in this cell. And it's really easy to do, to go ahead and add absolute references to say, for this cell up here, H3, to tell Excel not to go ahead and update it relative to the row when we drag the autofill handle down or we copy it. Just go ahead and click before the letter H, referencing the cell H3, and hit F4 on the keyboard. When you hit F4, it adds dollar signs, one before the column H and one before the row 3. What those dollar signs tell Excel is that anytime it sees it, it says, okay, if there's a dollar sign before the letter H, it means to keep the reference in column H. So if I go from left to right using the copy and paste, it's always going to stay in column H. Also, the dollar sign in front of row 3 tells it to always stay in row 3. So when I go from this cell down to the next, it's not going to be relative and update to the next row. It's going to always stay in row 3. Now you don't have to hit the F4 key on the keyboard if you want to. I mean, it was just faster for me. You can go ahead and delete the dollar signs and then just type them in yourself, a dollar sign before column H. So column H doesn't update, dollar sign before row 3, so 3 doesn't update. Hit enter. So when I come up here and I click on the cell and I click and drag the autofill handle down, click in there, and look what happens. Double click, and then the nice thing about double clicking is that it displays the formula in the cell and then it outlines the cells that it's referencing. So H8 right there, that's right. That's for this employee. But it's not moving down because we told it to stay by using those absolute references or dollar symbols there. So it's still in column H, row 3. Hit the escape key. I can go ahead and Control C that, and Control V as in Victor to paste it, and then Control V as in Victor to paste it, hit the escape key, and it works. Or like I said in a shortcut in an earlier training video, if I go ahead and delete that, as long as I got the first cell correct, and it's got absolute references or dollar markers in there, so I can keep that cell as a constant, I can just come over and hover over the lower right hand corner of the cell. I get my black autofill handle, double click really fast, and boom, it automatically fills it in for me, which would save you tons of time as opposed to clicking the autofill handle and dragging and dragging and dragging. Well, you may be wondering why did I put constants or absolute references in front of both the column and the row when it's only the row that's being updated. Well, good point. Let me go ahead and select the 3 cells, delete them, go back to the first one. If I come up here and I go ahead and delete the dollars and click and hit the backspace key to delete the dollar sign for H, H can be updated, but row 3 is always going to be constant. So that dollar sign tells Excel if we're going down to freeze the row, don't update it. If we're going to the right, to freeze it to the column here, H. But since I'm not going to the right, going out to other columns, then I really don't need to add the absolute reference here in front of the H. So if I go ahead and hit enter, let's go ahead and test it. Click here and double click on the black autofill handle really fast. Boom, it autofills it in really quick and it keeps the same row. So if I come down here, double click, you can quickly look at the formula, compare the matching colors to the cells. H9 blue, matching, so that's the cell it's multiplying by. H3 is in green by that cell up there. It didn't update, move it down to the next row because, again, row 3 has the absolute reference, the dollar sign there, to freeze it. So it doesn't update it when we copy and paste it from our original cell here, or use the autofill handle to copy and paste the formula. Let me go ahead and hit the escape key. And one last thing, it might be helpful for you to understand this. If after this training video you find that you're going to be using absolute references a lot, let me go ahead and double click back in the cell. You can of course come in here. You don't have to go up in the formula bar to hit the F4 key, or you can, go ahead and type in the dollar signs. Let me go ahead and delete those dollar symbols and show you that when you hit the F4 key once, it adds the constants or the dollar symbols for both the column and the row. If you hit it again, it'll just apply to the row. If you hit it again, it'll apply for just the column. If you hit it again, it removes it. If you hit it again, it'll add the dollar signs back to both the column and the row. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.